Welcome back to another episode of My Father Before Me, a regular segment where we bring together nerds from different generations to discuss the films that define the culture and made us who we are today. I'm your host, Brennan Sem. Joining me, as usual, is a man that I've climbed many a tree with, my own father, Tory Sem. How are you doing today, Dad?
Climbing less trees than I used to. How about that?
Well, I mean, that's just so sad. I don't know if you should admit that on air. No. Well, honestly, it actually could be good because, spoiler alert, if you're caught climbing a tree, you may die.
I saw that. It's rough.
And you hit the ground really hard. So, what movie are we going to be discussing today, Dad?
Okay. So we've seen My King Kong.
Yes.
Right. We've seen My Lord of the Rings before Lord of the Rings came out.
Sure.
So today we're going to be discussing My Tarzan. And we're talking, of course, of Greystoke. What is it? Let's see. Greystoke, The Legend of Tarzan. Is that the full thing?
Yes.
I feel like there's a lot.
Lord of the
Apes. I forgot the Lord of the Apes.
Yeah, how dare you forget the title.
Which, incidentally, you never hear the word Tarzan anywhere in the movie.
I was just going to ask you that because I was scanning for it the entire time. I was like, was I just not paying attention? But no, they don't mention it.
Nope, they never mention it. Of course, it's the title, so everybody knows. But
yeah. So do you think, well, I guess that doesn't make any sense. I was going to say, do you think they didn't mention it because of, like, say, copyright stuff? But if it's in the title...
Well, here's the deal, and you've seen the bookshelf. I've got all those, a bunch of those serials that your grandpa used to have of all the Tarzan, right? I haven't read one of them, so there you go. But I got them. I collect them. But according to the trivia or something I saw, Tarzan is actually Edgar Rice Burroughs, of course, the author, the creator of the Tarzan comic books. He came up with Tarzan because the apes in Tarzan actually have a rudimentary language.
Oh.
And that's what, and they came up with the name Tarzan. So I guess these apes don't really talk. So maybe that's why we don't know his name is Tarzan.
Oh, I mean, that is a good point. Yeah, sure. That would have been interesting. That would have been an interesting choice to make if they decided to make the apes talk.
Well, you got to wonder, is the prequel for the Planet of the Apes? No. Who knows? They're getting smart.
Oh yeah. So in this mixed universe that we're doing, the Lord of Greystoke, the title would pass down and eventually end up in San Francisco, right? Because that's why. What's his name? James Franco. That's why he's got such a connection with Little Caesar.
He is an Earl of Greystoke from way back.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, obviously, at that point, they've sold the property, so they've broken the family rule.
Never sell it. I don't know. No, but interesting. Okay, so it came out in 1984, right? So I'm 9 or so.
Sure.
And I remember this one, and of course, I remember being traumatized by it. Of course, it's definitely a how do we say, a dramatic take on Tarzan?
Yes.
It's not what... So if we think of Tarzan, there's two things we think about, right? There's the old serial shows that they'd have in the theaters, the kind of thing that George Lucas used to talk about, where you'd have a short movie every week or something like that.
Right.
You'd pick it up, there'd be a cliffhanger, you'd pick it up and that sort of thing. So there's the old Tarzan. There's the more recent Tarzan with a Skarsgård, which,
I forgot about that.
Where they're trying to do something with it and trying to make it work. But yeah, this Tarzan is definitely a different take on it, or a way to, legitimize the whole Tarzan world.
I think that's fair. Yeah, I mean, definitely it's a much more realistic take, I suppose. It's definitely, sort of dark and gritty. You definitely see the lives and the trials and tribulations of these apes and animals in the jungle and stuff. And I do think that works in its favor in this case. And especially I think it could have been done, or it would have come off really terribly, I think, if the nonverbal communication from the apes and from like the child actors hadn't been so good.
Right.
Like if they hadn't done such a good job of conveying the storytelling, I think it would have been just horrible.
Right. And of course, you got to credit Rick Baker with that, right? There's one of the Oscars that this was nominated for was makeup effects, because they created, what I would consider realistically looking apes. But, of course, they had acrobats in there doing all the moves and stuff. We talk to Andy Serkis right now with the Planet of the Apes, but this was the predecessor to that kind of thing, right? You had acrobats who were trained to be ape-like and to work well in those costumes. Of course, they had the arm extensions trying to make it, realistic and stuff. And I think that really goes to show you what kind of care they were putting into it. They also specifically went out and they wanted to make sure that the apes were discernible. And you can tell, ape to ape, that they're different people.
Ape to ape. Sorry.
Ape kill ape. That they're different people, right?
Definitely.
Or they're different animals.
Yeah. People's right. They have
characters.
Feelings.
How about that? Different characters they are.
I'm in favor of great ape personage.
But of course, Rick Baker, if you watch any of the documentaries on ILM, he was big in, in the Star Wars, the original Star Wars practical effects, makeup effects there and that kind of thing. He's been around a ton. I used to watch that on the Sci-Fi channel, the Face Off makeup competition. They always talk about Rick Baker. I think he came in a few times a guest judge or something.
Oh, that's
like that,
fun.
But he's a big name when you get into that kind of thing and those practical effects. And of course, like I said, he was nominated here. I don't think he won.
No, I don't think so.
Anybody nominated for this won. But it, it was I would almost call it an Oscar bait in a way movie because Hugh Hudson, the director, just came off of Chariots of Fire, of course.
Oh, sure. Classic.
That one, I think just the previous year or something like that, it had won all those awards.
Oh, no. I'm sorry. I didn't realize Ralph Richardson must have died during filming.
Well, and he actually died before the movie was released, and at the end of the credit, or at the very beginning of the credits, they have an in memoriam for him.
I didn't even see that.
Right, but he did get nominated, was posthumously,
yes,
or whatever, for Best Actor.
In
a supporting role. Sorry.
Yeah, no, Best Actor in a supporting role. So yeah, only nominations, no wins. Which I don't know. I mean. Okay, well, let's see. I mean, what else was up for best makeup? Because obviously, I mean, that was that was the wrong year. It looked amazing. Like you mentioned, I mean, I think it's the opening scene is where we I don't know, maybe it's not the opening scene, but it's relatively early on. One of the first few times we see the apes and they're in the jungle, and it just looks amazing. And granted, it's partially helped out by the cinematography there, by the fact that it's a downpour, right? And the lighting is not necessarily amazing. But, I mean, you say realistic, it really does look amazing.
Right. You don't necessarily even think you're not looking at apes.
Yeah.
Now, and they do have there's a few real chimpanzees, I think, mixed in the background shots and stuff, but most of the main ones, of course, that they can control are the acrobats in there. So
yeah, and I thought the movement, I mean, we talk about like Planet of the Apes and stuff, like the movement of the apes. You mentioned the acrobatics was really good, and I saw that in it really drew my attention right in the opening credits. There we had Peter Elliott as primate choreographer.
That's right.
And Roger Fouts.
That's easy for
maybe
you to say.
Fous. I don't know. Maybe he's French. But as the primate consultant. And I think, when you have people like that, or we mentioned Planet of the Apes with like Andy Serkis, somebody who's going to take the time to do the research and be like, okay, how would an ape act in this situation? It makes the movie much more enjoyable and feel realistic. And I think it's one of the reasons that this movie sort of came off as well as it did.
Right. Yeah. And I think that even, I was I watched it in a couple parts. But when you get to, because it's almost two different movies. Right?
Yeah.
There's the jungle part at the beginning, which arguably I would say I enjoy more. And then there's the part where he becomes, civilized or comes into our world. Right. Even when he's there, though, I think they do a great job of him reacting certain ways where the ape's coming through.
Oh,
right?
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we talk when they're learning to dance and stuff. When Jane.
Yeah.
Jane. Me Tarzan, you Jane.
Yeah.
There we go. Demi Moore, when they're dancing and stuff, and he's like, hooting and hollering, and when they get a little intimate later on in the movie, you can definitely see some of the ape stuff coming through. And I think, I mean, it's one of those things that lends to, this is a guy who has spent 30, I guess, I don't know, at least 20 some odd years in the jungle among these apes. It's going to take a while for that learned behavior to leave.
Right. And I'm going to interrupt you before we get a bunch of emails. It's not Demi Moore.
Oh, it's not?
It was Mary, shoot. And here I'm going to sound all smart.
Andi MacDowell.
Yes. Andi MacDowell.
I know why I was thinking that because in season 2 of Friends, I've been watching Friends recently.
Well, good.
In season 2 of Friends, they talk about, Ross is dating some new girl and she's going to cut Monica's hair after Phoebe screws it up. And there's a whole Andi MacDowell, Demi Moore thing. Anyways.
It is interesting, though. Something to note, Andi MacDowell, of course, we know more recently she was in Multiplicity with Michael Keaton.
Oh,
that great movie where he makes clones.
I didn't realize that was Michael Keaton.
Yeah, it's definitely worth another watch. But this was her. I think she even gets an introducing credit on this movie because it's one of her early things. And they brought her in. They gave her a dialect coach because she's from North Carolina, I think, or something. I heard in an interview, and they wanted her to, have the English accent.
Sure.
They ended up dubbing her lines. Glenn Close actually does all her lines.
Really?
Right. So she doesn't have anytime she's speaking, it's actually Glenn Close overdubbed.
Yeah.
But it is. I did hear in an interview that she got to use her voice. She made the noises of childbirth. And that's her voice.
Okay.
So I don't know where the decision making was. I don't know if they had to make sure her voice was in there for some screen acting credit or something. But yeah, so her voice is the childbirth noises, which she wasn't even in that scene. Yeah. But everything else about her is Glenn Close, Oscar winner Glenn Close.
Yeah, I was gonna say, well, if you're gonna have somebody dub your lines, you want it to be somebody like Glenn Close.
It is interesting. I think that. I don't think she was overly excited about that one, but like I said, I think she, it's her introducing credit or whatever. So I mean, it's her first major role.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, if it's one of your first things, what are you gonna do? Yeah. Like, I mean, granted, I'm not 100% sure on the timeline here. Was Christopher Lambert like a well-known name at this point?
I think he also gets an introducing credit because this is like his first American. Production. I think he was a French actor or something like that. But this is his first English-speaking role.
Oh, yep, there we go.
His first ape-speaking role as well. But I think that he actually gets an introducing credit as well because it's his first English-speaking role in a film. Of course, we talked about him with Highlander.
Oh yeah,
which is where this one reminded me of this movie too. But.
Yeah, I thought Christopher Lambert, I thought he was pretty good. I mean, I wasn't expecting I wasn't expecting to have my socks blown off. I mean, it's Tarzan. Right. You're not particularly thinking, oh, this is going to be, a movie where this guy goes into an amazing monologue.
I think, he pulls it off, especially when his grandpa dies,
Yeah.
And then his monkey dad.
He was my father. Yeah. Well, the delivery on that line, I don't know if was necessarily.
I think that line is one of those lines where it's put in there for the audience just to make sure the audience knows. Yeah. It's not just that it's some random ape that he hung out with. I think they're trying to point that out. Well,
so I thought, I'm glad they did point it out because I didn't realize it was his father ape. I thought it was the ape who now I realize that he kills. But I thought it was the ape who was like mean to him his whole time.
He did have that one, and they are awful similar when they are in there. When you're getting to that point, and again, that's kind of early in the movie, and you don't really have that mindset necessarily. Yeah. You think just a bunch of gorillas is not necessarily. I don't know if it got played off as a family group per se necessarily. Obviously we got the mom gorilla who dumps off her dead baby, and stuff. But
yeah, that was pretty.
That's pretty rough right at the beginning. We got dead baby monkeys.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, not only was it like dead baby monkey, like we see him a little bit. It was like we get to see his like body, which like slumped to the ground,
right?
And then he's like covered in blood. Like it was a little bit gruesome.
It was pretty harsh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Now you mentioned earlier that you said that it felt like it's basically like two stories,
right?
Now, obviously, I think the better way to do that is the way that they would do it now is to make it a two-parter,
right?
Where you end off, the first one with him and Darnote setting off to Greystoke or whatever. I think I liked the second part of the story more than the first part of the story,
right?
Because I think obviously it just has more potential story-wise.
I think it does. Well, then you've got more dialogue.
Well, yeah.
Right?
I mean, that helps.
Yeah.
But, I mean, specifically because you get more... That's where you get the opportunity for the character development for John Clayton, or for Tarzan.
Mm-hmm.
In the beginning, it's not really developed. I mean, sure. I mean, they're developing him, but that's just who he is. And then in the second part, you see him change. And one way that I think they could have made the second part, I don't know, maybe feel a little more impactful, I guess, is if they had gone the route of like a John the Savage route from Brave New World of Aldous Huxley, of like this, John Clayton comes in and if they played up the fact that he's, I don't know if disgusted is the right word with this society, but if they'd played out the fact a little bit more about how it's so divorced and how it's antithetical to his existence,
right?
Rather than just the way that it plays out in the movie, it's like he's having a fun time, and then two of the only people he cares about dies, and so he's like, all right, well, I guess I'll just go home.
Right. And I think that, I know that one of the things I saw was that it was originally a 3-hour movie. And I wonder if we get more in that, because when you're watching it, and one thing I noticed a lot is that there's the other gentleman who is on the estate, who's I think the main the 6th Earl of Greystoke calls him a little slow in the head, right?
Oh,
and he's
yes.
getting beaten because he's playing in the car, and that sort of thing. That character kind of comes out of nowhere. I mean, Tarzan jumps down and protects him because he's getting beaten, and then the next scene, the Earl kind of says, "Yeah, he's a little slow in the head and stuff." But it feels like there could be more there to kind of build that up and give us some sort of an understanding of who all these people are. You know what I mean? I think that it could have been laid out a little bit more. There could have been more character growth. That's why I think when I look at it, I kind of look at it as the two movies, and I'm maybe a little bit more drawn towards the jungle aspect of it, just because I feel like the second part of it just kind of throws some characters out, do some stuff, and then he goes back to the jungle.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know. I feel like they could have done a little bit more with that to kind of give us a more cohesive story to that section, other than let's show him seeing a few things, falling for a lady and then leaving.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely I agree. It feels rushed. You're right. Well, I mean, an extra 40 minutes if they wanted to make it 3 hours, that would have helped. But no, yeah, it's definitely rushed. I think the way that you sort of keep the same general time frame, but sort of make the story more impactful is, I guess, if you make it so Tarzan becomes less civilized,
right?
Because in the beginning, obviously, I mean, it's not like he's when he's in England, he's never like full ape. Obviously, he's learned a little bit. But by the time he decides to leave, he's a very, very civilized guy. Like he's more or less acclimated to society, right? And so it sort of feels a little out of place. Whereas if they had spent that time instead trying to show him acclimate and become civilized like more and more slowly, then I think that it just would have been more impactful and actually felt like it mattered when he went back.
You bet.
I don't know. But I think it was definitely, I mean, so far, I don't know what I was going to say there.
I think it's, like I say, it's interesting. There definitely is something on the cutting room floor there to build that out a little bit. I don't know. Maybe even if you have a little bit with the family before they leave, right? At the very beginning, we get a quick shot of them before they have their shipwreck or something like that. If you give some sort of a backstory there or something, maybe that could kind of drag that out a little bit.
Yeah, I think, I mean, that's partially where the trouble lies, I think, is that the movie's called Greystoke, right? So it sort of makes you feel like the whole point of the story is his time in England. And the goings on there, and it they have this theme throughout the movie, which is like him talking about his future. Future is the entire theme of the movie, right? And so you get the sense that the point of it is supposed to be about him rejecting his birthright, rejecting Greystoke. But you're right. In the beginning, if that's the point, then they should have established it. They should have had at least a scene where Tarzan's dad is like, sorry, that was a funny clip of him just eating a fly that was on his face.
Well, of course.
Even just a short little clip of dialogue where the Tarzan's dad is being lambasted, is being chastised for going on this trip to Africa. Where he's like, "You're rejecting your birthright. Who's gonna take over Greystoke when I'm dead?"
Right.
But it's nothing. So, yeah, I don't know. I definitely think that they could have done a little bit more there. But we will be back to talk a little bit more about the amazing and the horrible aspects of this movie after a brief word from our sponsors. And we're back. Now, we've mentioned a few of the cast members, but we haven't really talked about the vast majority of them. We've only talked about Lambert and MacDowell, really.
Well, I'm going to admit, and like I said, we can go to our actor who was nominated for this film posthumously.
Yes.
But
yes.
I'm not going to say that I know him necessarily, or a lot of the rest of the cast, right? So I think that, and maybe this is just because maybe this is because I haven't seen Chariots of Fire, because I think he was on Chariots of Fire. Or I know another one of our actors, of course, the one we do know is Ian Holm.
Yes.
We obviously Bilbo, but he's also, we've seen him in Aliens, we've seen him in Time Bandits, we've seen where else? I feel like we've seen him. We've already discussed him in other movies.
I think you're right, but I have no idea what it would have been.
Yeah, because the Alien, Time Bandit. Oh, I don't know.
Was he? Wait, he was in Time Bandits?
Yeah, he was Napoleon. Remember?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, they showed up and he was Napoleon.
I do remember that now.
Maybe that's always done in our podcast about him, but
could be. I mean, we probably talked about him a little bit because he was in Brazil and you watched that.
That's right. He was probably that might be the other thing I'm thinking of too, but. So we've seen him a lot, and of course, he is Fifth Element. I know we discussed that. We obviously haven't watched that one yet, but he there's a perennial for you, right?
Definitely.
He's got all the way from being in the in Aliens to The Hobbit.
Yeah, definitely a
which
wide
he just
range.
recently passed. Oh yeah, 2020 he passed. So,
yeah, R.I.P.
We just recently lost him. But.
Yeah, he definitely a different role it felt in Alien.
Well, and we just saw him. Spoiler alert.
Oh yeah, he was in Alien Romulus.
Maybe that's spoilers. I don't know.
Nah, it's been out long enough.
That's right. He so he's still doing work. He's still getting work.
He's
amazing.
Still getting paid. I didn't realize. I forgot that he was in The Fifth Element.
Yeah,
I don't remember him at all.
Oh, he's the major. He's the priest, right? Remember there's the priest running around or whatever that is from the cult.
Yeah, I gotta watch that again.
I almost considered that we need to throw that one up, but I think it's 2001. When is The Fifth Element? It's just on the screen there, but
97.
97. So I guess it's old enough. We'll call it. We just did 99.
Yeah, I was gonna say what was Virtuosity.
Virtuosity. So it's an older one.
95. So it would be newer than Virtuosity.
It would be probably our newest.
I think it's before I was born, so I think
it still counts.
I think really that's probably where we should draw the line is movies before I was
born.
You. Pre me.
There we go.
Yeah, the new wave nerds. We'll have to come up with some fun way of doing reckoning of the time.
That's right.
What do they do? Shire reckoning and
the Shire
Rings and after the Battle of
We got AB or
After, I don't know. Anyways,
we'll definitely be pulling this one. We're going to get to it eventually because it's definitely one worth discussing.
Yeah. Well, so Ian Holm in Greystoke,
right? Speaking of Greystoke,
so he plays what is he? A Belgian a Belgian named Darnaud, I believe.
That sounds right. Yes.
Capitaine Philippe Darnaud.
Well, that's easy for you to say.
Yes. And he was very enjoyable. I liked him a lot throughout the whole thing. This is weird because I felt like he got a lot of screen time, but I do wish I would have been able to see a little bit more of the relationship between him and Tarzan.
Right. You can obviously, because when he does leave Greystoke, Tarzan is pretty broken up.
Yeah.
Going running after him there. So you can infer that in their travels or whatever,
get down.
When they are, obviously he's the one who teaches him English. Enough to speak, and to read, because at one point, Greystoke, the Earl of Greystoke, even says, "Can he read English?" And if he's gotten that far, obviously they spend a ton of time together, because that's not the kind of thing that just pops up.
No,
right?
Well, and to be fair, we must recognize the fact that John Clayton has to be a genius to spend 20 years among the apes. You can be a good mimic.
Right.
But to understand and grasp language after 20 years with the apes, that's pretty impressive.
He definitely, he's getting that figured out, obviously. And it is interesting that he does pick up on things quick enough, which is surprising. And I don't feel that they play, it's almost like it's not even a fish out of water, right? Mm-hmm. We talk about the fish out of water stories, classic Crocodile Dundee.
Oh, sure.
I'm sure you haven't watched that one. But those fish out of water stories where they are awkward and stuff, I don't think they really play that up at all. Granted, he is in there and he's doing things where he is being different, being ape-like, climbing around on the roof, hopping down the walls, and that sort of thing. But I don't necessarily see that there is the that whole thing where yes, probably the most fish out of water thing he does is he's drinking the soup from the bowl.
Yeah,
right. You talk about another movie that you watched with your Aunt Nikki, Splash. Right. There's the scene where she's in the restaurant eating the lobster or whatever, just mowing through it.
Yeah.
Right. Even that isn't necessarily played up when Tarzan's sitting in there and doing that kind of thing. So.
That's actually a really good point. He is more or less accepted the second that he is brought there, right? Which I guess is maybe a function of the fact that this caste of society, right? That they just have the luxury of being able to be like, yeah, whatever, he's eccentric. And also, to be fair, now that I think about it, we are also talking quasi royalty of England and stuff. They would definitely be used to some. I'm
assuming I'm also assuming the gentleman I was talking about before, where Tarzan jumps in and he's I always want to categorize it. He's the Earl says he's a little slow in the head.
Yeah,
it's not me saying that.
No.
You definitely get the impression that maybe that's the whole inbreeding thing that you get from royalty.
Yeah,
at that time, and I could be wrong on that. Maybe I'm just doing stereotypes there, but.
Well, never mind. I was going to pull up some pictures.
Right.
I definitely think, it's weird. I think it's another thing where if you were going to do the story today, and not in the Legend of Tarzan way, but in a Greystoke way, but just for a modern audience,
right,
you would have Tarzan come to this, upper strata of society, and he would just be immediately looked down upon and immediately castigated and looked as though he were only an oaf, even though he's a great mimic who can understand language. The whole movie would have been the scene in where they're at the dinner table where what's his name, Lord Charles Esker, is like, I don't remember what he says. It's something derogatory about. He sort of insinuates that Tarzan's kind of stupid.
Right.
I don't remember the line, but that's what the whole movie would have been. Whereas in this case, you're right. It sort of doesn't feel like that at all.
Right.
He just feels like he's
then
there.
You'd get the courtroom drama after the Earl passes that he's unfit for the inheritance and all that stuff. Right. You'd get all kinds of that kind of thing going. And I think that maybe that's where, and not that I necessarily want all of that, but I feel like they didn't. It didn't hit the mark for me.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, I mean, that's not necessarily the direction that I would want it to go, but if you had gone in any one of these directions, it would have made it so that you could focus on one thing and actually make it like an in-depth story.
Give you something to latch onto, I think, or some kind of growth like you're talking about. Mm-hmm. There's not necessarily any growth or anything like that, or character growth or anything. I mean, I guess maybe there's a little character growth in him just realizing his home is the jungle.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, there is. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I suppose you can say there's growth, but then that growth just happens at the end.
Right.
Because if that were the point, then throughout the whole second part of the movie, he would be arguing, or he wouldn't be arguing, but he would be struggling against this society and trying to act the way that he would in the jungle. But it's just like he's just chilling.
Right.
It's a situation where, like I mentioned earlier, that it feels like the theme of this movie is supposed to be about like the future, about like what you do, or about being able to think about things beyond the present, right? Mm-hmm. But that theme is not really like hit home throughout the movie. Like it's there, but it feels like it's not the main function.
Right.
And I don't think there is sort of an overarching theme. And I think maybe that's one of the reasons that the story sort of feels just like all over the place.
Right.
There's no unifying vision.
Yeah, and that's, like I say, that's where it falls through. Of course, the reason we watched this is because I watched it a ton as a kid, right? So, I mean, I got the whole Tarzan side of things. The killing the panther.
Yes, that was really cool.
That sort of thing. And I don't know. I just wish there was a little bit more to that. And maybe that's me wishing Peter Jackson did this and nobody cut him short or anything like he's known to do now. But I don't know. I think it was. It's definitely worth a viewing. It's definitely one that, like I say, informed me of my Tarzan in the days.
Yeah,
and I think that we have had modern remakes that have not done well.
Yeah,
so much that I know I've seen them and can't really think about them right now.
Yeah, don't know anything about it.
But interestingly, so I did notice in one of the trivias that Stellan Skarsgård, we know Stellan.
Sure.
He's our boy.
The best Skarsgård, in my opinion.
He was actually up for the role of Tarzan. Oh. And it is, in the more recent Tarzan, it is a Skarsgård.
Yeah.
Who is now?
I think it's Alexander.
I think you're right there.
There's too many.
It's the one off True Blood, I think. But
yes, Alexander. Yeah, the one who in his picture is wearing no pants.
Well, of course not.
Oh, man. Yeah, no, I don't remember. I didn't realize he was in The Northman. I don't remember a single thing about this movie. To be honest, and this is sort of weird because you would given the predisposition I have towards apes and members of the great ape family, you would think that I'd be all over this. But Tarzan is not really one of the properties that really I am that familiar with.
Right.
Like the only thing that I know for a fact I've seen and can remember longer than 0.2 seconds about is the Disney version.
Right.
And I think that's just because I think Phil Collins did the soundtrack.
Well, another connection to that too that's kind of fun is there is an actress, I can't remember, Miriam Diabo or something. She was up for the role of Jane. She didn't get it because they said that when they talked to her, they kind of already had our girl in mind. So they already had Andi MacDowell. Man,
you wanted to say it to me more, didn't you?
No, I want. So Mary Elizabeth Master Antonio is who I always get her confused.
What?
Yeah, that's a good one. So she was up for the role, this Diabo actress, and her daughter became the voice of Tarzan in the Disney animated.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. So there's all kinds of connections. I mean, the whole nepotism thing is right in the Tarzan film. So.
Minnie Driver was the Gaynor Churchward is the mother of Minnie Driver.
Well, of course.
Is that who you were?
No, I said a Diabo, Miriam Diabo. It's D apostrophe or something. I don't know. It was in the IMDb trivia. Oh, this is gonna be a fun one. We're going all over the place.
Where's the trivia at? It's just a very fun name.
It is. And I feel like so that the Diabo, the daughter, I don't think she is the princess in a Conan movie, and I think it's the second one that we didn't watch.
Oh, dang it!
Yes.
Here we go.
There, Diabo.
Oh,
yes.
Yes, Miriam Diabo.
Miriam Diabo. There was Olivia Diabo. There is the actress I was thinking of. There.
Oh, it's a different Disney animated Tarzan thing.
There's lots of them.
I didn't realize there was more than just the one. The Legend of Tarzan.
And Tarzan and Jane, yes.
Wow. You know, I also remember George of the Jungle. Yeah. Oh, man. But yeah, no, so you would think that I would be all over this with the monkeys and the chimps and stuff. But for some reason, it just escaped me. I don't know why.
Well, I feel like that's why we need the Peter Jackson Tarzan. And you'd be all on board.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. I mean, it would be 4.5 hours of ape goodness. I would definitely be.
We'd have Andy Serkis being a monkey again.
Yeah.
Which would be what, his third time?
Oh, they can never have
third IP with Andy Serkis as a monkey. But
yeah, hey, they're apes. Monkeys have tails. How dare you?
How dare I?
We mentioned, the posthumously awarded nominee. That was a very weird sentence.
That's easy for you to say.
But yes. Ralph Richardson, you said that we don't really know him from much else, but he was the supreme being in time.
Okay, that's where we've seen him. I knew that. Well, like I said, I think he came over. There were quite a few actors that came over from Chariots of Fire, so I thought that's where that connection was. But you're right. Now that you say that, I do remember him in arguably his most famous role. But.
We will return the map.
That's right.
Yeah, no, I was actually thinking about rewatching that movie recently.
Okay, so we're gonna do a little Time Bandits rabbit hole. Yes, rewatch the movie, but also the Apple TV show ain't bad.
It isn't
with
Lisa
Kudrow and stuff. It's got some funny stuff in there. It's got some entertaining things. I thought it was decent. So.
Yeah, I did see. Yeah, I didn't. Once it came out, I'd considered getting Apple TV for the month to watch it, and then never thought about it again. But I did see that it didn't get renewed for a second season or something like that.
Oh, that's too bad. I mean, it had the characters in there were pretty good. I'm gonna spoil it. There's a scene where they go into, I think it's like 20s America, the gangsters, right? They're in this gangster scene. And they go, and they meet up with. It's probably too much of a setup, but they say, take it quick. They're trying to do a getaway. They come running out of this building, and they hop in the car and they say, "Quick, take us to where your hideout is." And she tells them, she says, "Okay, go turn right, because they actually ran out of their hideout. It's great. So they just drive quick around the block. Cause I don't know, they're just so, I don't know, something about it. It struck me funny. So
yeah,
I think it's worth a viewing. Certainly, I mean, I got to say, even though Thor: Love and Thunder wasn't the best, I like Taika Waititi.
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of thing. And I don't know, something about his humor kind of strikes me sometimes. So
yeah,
I think this was worth it.
He's definitely a silly guy. I'm sure I'll watch it at some point. I mean, Apple TV's cheap, isn't it?
That I don't know. I mooch it, so I couldn't tell you for sure.
Back when we lived in Omaha, Ted Lasso, it was what must have been like the second or third season or whatever.
Right.
And so it was super popular. And one of the girls I worked with was like, have you seen Ted Lasso? Every day at work. And I would say no. And she would say, just sign up for it. It's really cheap.
It's worth it. I mean, there's a lot on there. So I think it's worth it. So.
I have heard that Apple TV has actually been crushing it with some of their original series lately.
Well, if we're going to continue down the Apple TV rabbit hole, there was a series with Michelle Monaghan. I could be wrong. Anyways, it's called Silo. It's based off of a series of books, kind of a sci-fi, maybe post-apocalyptic. I don't want to say too much because it's going to spoil it. I think it's definitely worth a watch. So after we watched the first few episodes, I went and got the books and read through them, and the books are really good as well, by Hugh Howey.
Mm-hmm. That's such a good name.
Yes. But I like the premise for that show, and I think it's a pretty good adaptation. Rebecca Ferguson. I'm getting because they were both in Mission Impossible, so I'm getting all my dark-haired actresses confused.
Well, how could you forget the Reverend Mother?
That's right.
That's ridiculous.
I know. I gotta go. I'm done.
Okay. Well, before you leave, I did have one last thing that I wanted to say quick. We always talk about the cinematography here. This one, surprisingly amazing. There were some really, really good parts. The opening credits were not great. I mean, it was in motion,
right?
And so it was very out of focus. It was the 80s and it was film,
right?
And so I was like, all right, and I checked out for a little bit. I was obviously paying attention to the story, but I wasn't paying attention to the shots. And then when after they crash land, it is when John Clayton Sr., Tarzan's dad, there's a scene where he's rocking the baby and his face is seen through these posts, and then we cut back to the mom who is delirious and
right.
I think this is the scene where she dies, and we cut back to the dad and he's just rocking the baby, and it just looked absolutely amazing. And I was like, this is not the quality that I was expecting from this. And so I did a little bit of research. The cinematographer is John Alcott, and he's done quite a bit of work with Stanley Kubrick.
Of course.
If you can imagine, which is sort of weird. Specifically, he was the cinematographer for Barry Lyndon and A Clockwork Orange. A Clockwork Orange, one of the greatest movies of all time.
Right. Definitely, and definitely have a style.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And then he was, what was it? Additional camera and electrical on 2001. I also saw this, which I thought was fun. He was the cinematographer for The Beastmaster.
Well, they can't all be winners. I don't know. I do. So yes, I like, and I did like the, some of the sweeping shots you get of the Greystoke. Kind of showing that whole landscape. The whole estate and stuff. It was interesting how they were able to. And part of the story is he's talking about how, most people are breaking up their land and stuff, and he doesn't want to sell any of it. But I thought that was a great way to just show the vastness of it with that wall that was around it and that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, I like that too. It was a beautiful shot. I mean, there were beautiful shots throughout, and again, that scene would have just been so much better if they had hammered in the point of, like, the question is, what is Tarzan going to do with Greystoke?
Right.
Like that.
There was no conversation. He just left.
Yeah.
And I assume at this point, like I said, we don't get enough of a secession to say whether the one that's a little slow in the head is now got it all. Yeah. I don't know.
Well, now you hang on. There was a slight conversation where Lord Esker says he can't leave. And then Tarzan goes, I'm leaving.
Well, obviously that settled it.
So. Yeah, it was. I don't know what happens there. I mean, I'm sure they have somebody take over, like, power of attorney, essentially.
And I'm thinking, and in my head, I'm thinking to myself, at least just get married so you can pass it on to the wife.
Yeah.
Right? Or something like that. But
well,
I suppose back in those days, it's not like the marriages dissolve or anything like that if he's gone.
Yeah.
If he's off in the jungle. So who knows?
Yeah. I suppose the sequel to this would have been, we find out that Jane is pregnant, and so Tarzan has to return to Greystoke and argue for his son's claim to the land.
Well, there's one of Grandpa's books says Son of Tarzan. So I'm sure that's it.
I'm sure it's just.
Of course, that's like number 18 in the series or something like that. But there is a deleted scene where Jane actually goes off in the jungle and lives with him, which I assume is where we get the Disney movie Tarzan and Jane. So.
Oh yes, that makes sense.
Which I'm kind of here for that, right? I'm kind of here for a little bit more of the jungle and him surviving and having to maybe give us the ways, show us, that one gentleman, Esker or whatever, is talking about, we need to get him with the scientists and talk. Well, yeah, you can learn a lot about the primate lifestyle that way, a lot easier than can just by cutting them up and leaving them open on the table, and stuff. But
you could actually learn about the intricacies of their society,
right,
from one who knows the society and speaks English.
Right.
I mean, it's a completely reasonable and valid point. I think the issue is that guy just has a face where when you say it, you think he wants to cut into Tarzan's brain.
Yeah, it's definitely punchable face.
Yeah. But I think we're going to end it there. And any final thoughts, Dad?
No, where were we at on the Willow scale?
On the Willow scale, I don't know. I was trying to think about that on today during work. I think this is... I would probably say it's definitely a better made movie than Willow. As far as enjoyment goes, I'd say probably I lean towards Willow just because it's, there's magic and it's exciting. But I would say that this is definitely a better movie than Willow.
It is. Well, he's coming off Best Picture. Right?
Yeah.
Obviously, you're going to get a different caliber of show there. And it's made for that reason, not necessarily where Willow wasn't. Willow was made for entertainment. So.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, so definitely I think it's worth a watch. I mean, we watched it on YouTube, right? It's available for free with ads.
Yes, or on Hoopla. If you get it through your library.
Oh, well, there you go. If you're still old.
Libraries are a valuable resource.
I know. I'm writing a whole comic about it. But yeah, in any case, I think we're going to leave it there, and we will be back here in 2 more weeks with another review of a classic movie, and we will see you guys then.